You're listening to the Utah Checkdown Podcast. And now your host, Josh Furlong.
Welcome back to another edition of the Utah Checkdown Podcast. I am Josh Furlong. Happy to be back with you. As always, we're just going to jump right into it because my time is limited with the busy schedule, and I got to get up to Utah to talk to the defensive players. But I wanted to get this out before we had too many things to pile on. So today we're going to just briefly look at the top, or the AP Top 25 rankings that just were released, and where Utah sits, and then do a recap of spring camp following Utah's first scrimmage. So before we do that, let me tell you about our partners. At Canyon View Credit Union, it's on the house. Close a mortgage and get a free appraisal up to $600. To learn more details or apply, visit canyonviewcu.com. Also, while we're on that, we're going to talk a little bit about the college and pro pick'em that we're launching at KSL.com. We've done the college brand for a decade now. This is 10 years. And many of you have participated in that. But if you haven't signed up for this season, go do that. You can win weekly gift cards if you're in the top three, $100 gift card for the winner each week, and then a top prize at the end. We also do that for Pro Pick'em, so NFL Pick'em. That one, similar thing. Pick 5 games, get the closest score, win prizes. So you go to KSL.com. You can go sign up for those, and we'll get the season rolling. So with that, let's just jump right into it. On Monday, so yesterday, if you are listening to this on Tuesday, the Associated Press released its consensus AP Top 25 preseason poll. As many of you know, I am a voter on that poll, and so my ballot came out on Sunday. I've talked about it on the episode. I'm not going to break down mine too crazy because it doesn't really matter at this point, and I want to get to more of the meat. But the preseason poll came out, and I understand there's some hate for preseason polls. I get it, right? Like, it is what it is. But the reality is this is just a snapshot in time, right? Like, there's nothing binding to this. There's nothing about this that sets teams up for better success if you're ranked in the preseason top 25. It's really just a snapshot in time and where, voters, sports writers, around the country view programs, right? There's many programs in the top 25 that will fall out. Utah was actually in the top 25 last year in the preseason, ranked fairly high, and clearly missed out significantly. So there's a lot of teams. Florida State last year, for example, was highly ranked and then went 2-10. So it's not indicative of anything. I know some people think that, because you put this team at number 1, that means that they're going to be there forever. Like, it doesn't matter. And I understand some people want it as, after 4 weeks, check it in. Once again, this is just a perception, and it all shakes out in the end. You can hate polls. I know that they're flawed in many respects, but at the same time, it's just a snapshot in time. So with that being said, the preseason poll comes out. These are the quote-unquote official rankings for the season until the college football playoff rankings are released. And so that's just kind of what we're going to go with. And so as part of that, Texas comes in at number 1 this year. A lot of optimism with Arch Manning and what Texas is able to do. So really curious to see what happens there. Beyond that, in the top 10 is Penn State, Ohio State, Clemson, and Georgia, and then Notre Dame, Oregon, Alabama, LSU, and Miami. Obviously, that is pretty heavily Big Ten, SEC, but for good reason. These are majority of the top teams. I don't think many people are going to argue with that, regardless of preseason or not. Most of these teams are the best teams in the country. And so you can be frustrated with the Big Ten and the SEC and kind of their dominance in the sport, but they're the ones that win the college football championships by and large. So until a team from the ACC or the Big 12 or some other program in the group of 6 decide to win a championship, that's just the nature of what it's going to be. So that's the ever-long fight to be able to gain supremacy in college football. So don't really see too much craziness in that top 10, but obviously very, very weighted towards those 2 conferences as expected. Now, looking for the Big 12, Arizona State checks in at number 11. They are the highest-ranked team from the Big 12. Not really a surprise. They returned a ton of their roster from last season when they won the Big 12 championship. And until proven otherwise, this is a team that is going to be the favorite, right? I've mentioned that I think Arizona State's going to take a step back. I just kind of get that vibe. But there's nothing to say that they couldn't replicate last season's success and continue this year. So until proven otherwise, they're going to be the top dog in the Big 12. And then beyond that, you have 3 other teams from the conference ranked in the top 25, including number 17, Kansas State, number 22, Iowa State, and number 23, Texas Tech. Texas Tech, obviously, getting a lot of praise, or maybe not even praise, but love based on their transfer portal. So, really fascinated to see how that goes and all that kind of stuff. But you don't care about any of those. You care about Utah. And so receiving votes at number 26, if you were to kind of continue on in the poll, is BYU. They were 36 points away from number 25, eclipsing Boise State. So it was a close race. So you've got a team that is close, and then Utah was just barely after them at 27. So Utah actually had more consistent votes inside the top 25, but BYU had some higher voters. I think some people were putting a lot of stock into last season's success, and so BYU is ahead of Utah right now. Either way, both programs are getting respected. They're not in the top 25, which to me indicates that they have a lot of love and expectations for these programs, but at the same time, there's still more to be determined, right? Even if you snuck in at 25, I don't know that changes anything other than just saying you're a preseason top 25. So, it is what it is. Others receiving vote is TCU and Colorado. So that's, quite a bit of teams, 9 teams that are being considered from the Big 12, that are in the mix for a Big 12 title. There could be other teams in there, but I think general consensus is that those teams are the ones competing for a conference title. So really fascinated to see how that goes. The real battle here is the Big 12 versus the ACC. Right now, the ACC is being respected a little bit more in terms of kind of their top teams. And I don't know that I would disagree right now. I think the ACC has a few more, I wouldn't even call them elite teams. You could kind of lump Clemson into that right now. But you have teams that are more of the higher tier as opposed to the Big 12 where there's a jumbled mess right now. So we'll see what happens there. But trying to move this podcast along, we're going to continue on there. I apologize for this short episode. Maybe it'll be better. Maybe you'll like these ones better. I don't know. But, it is the nature of trying to get these things in before I have to do the other parts of my job. Over the weekend, whatever the days run together at this point, Utah named its captains. This is player chosen, right? This isn't the coaches naming the captains. This is the entire team voting upon captains and basically saying these are the guys that we trust to lead us. And traditionally speaking, they pick 2 players from the offense, 2 players from the defense. Occasionally, you'll get a special teams guy in there, and it's really just kind of the vibe of the team, right? And so this year, the 4 captains include Spencer Fano and Jaron Kump, 2 guys on the offensive side that are obviously on a heralded offensive line. I think that says a ton about kind of what this offensive line means to the program, to that side of the ball, especially with Spencer Fano getting all the praise that he's getting. But then Jaron Kump, a guy that has been in the program forever, just getting the love and respect of his peers, right? I think that shows... that's a great sign. Many will look at it and say Devin Dampier wasn't labeled a captain. He's on the leadership team. I don't know that matters in this instance, and I think this is actually the right way to go. There's no doubt that Devin Dampier is a leader, and I don't doubt that the players want him to kind of be that captain. But I think looking at the trajectory and kind of the vibe of this team, that offensive line is the engine that makes this go. So I think this is a smart move by the players. These are guys that are passionate. They are the guys that are essentially what's going to make everything work. And, they can be effective together. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, it's Lander Barton and Logan Fano, 2 proven guys that obviously have a ton of experience. Both, have been coming off of injuries, and so last year wasn't up to the expectations that either one of them have. But, good things to come from these 2. for this next year, if you believe that they're fully healthy and kind of the conversations that have been had. So really, really smart move there as well. The really kind of cool thing for Utah here is that all 4 of these are from Utah. I don't know of a time, and look, I haven't had time to do the research. My last couple days have been really packed. My wife's birthday was on Sunday. My youngest son's birthday was yesterday. So trying to juggle all that with trying to do a job was a challenge. So I haven't had a chance to look this up. I'm sorry, I'm failing you. But it's kind of a cool thing that all 4 of these guys are Utahns, and so it means a lot for Utah to be able to have the in-state recruiting hit. These are guys that are obviously doing well, but kind of the character of these guys, right? They're the ones that are the heartbeat of this program. You could obviously throw Devin Dampier in there. There's no question that he's in there, but really cool to see these 4 individuals be able to get that opportunity. Let's jump into Camp Kyle updates. So we had media sessions last Wednesday and Thursday ahead of the scrimmage. There quite honestly, there wasn't a ton there. There were some updates on QB2 that have since kind of, been I don't want to say overshadowed, but have since been updated from that. And so I'm going to play you Kyle Whittingham's audio from yesterday, Monday, after Saturday's scrimmage. So it's, all of this information is getting to a point where Utah's trying to identify who their top guys are, right? You're trying to separate the 1s from the 2s and then the 2s from the rest of the pack, right? And so you're trying to get your 2 deep set. You're about halfway through camp. You're trying to get everything ready with a football game in 18 days, less than that for game prep. And so there's a lot of decisions that are being made. And so let's jump into the Kyle Whittingham audio from yesterday and kind of what he had to say.
How did the scrimmage go Saturday?
Yeah, it went well. It wasn't as physical as some scrimmages we've had. With the ones, we had most of the ones that thud work, not live. And so that was a little bit different in that regard. We've done that in the past at times. And we just felt like that was the best approach. For the first scrimmage, 2's got all the live work. They were live the entire scrimmage. And so that's a good teaching tape. And I think we're in a good place right now. We've got 10 practices in after today, and 15 more to go, and we'll be ready to play.
How do you feel about the wide receiver group and guys
that group is coming along? We feel like we've identified the top 7 or 8 guys that are going to be the travelers, and that we're going to sink all the reps into the rest of the way. So that group is really starting to gel, I guess you could say.
What's it look like with your running back depth as well?
The top 2 guys will be Wayshawn Parker and Corey Rogers, not necessarily in that order. They're interchangeable as the 1. We're also having some good production from Daniel Bray, Racine Guillory, a couple of freshmen that really look like they have a lot of promise. And then, of course, Devin is like a running back there at times. And so he's adding to what we're doing. And then you got guys running the speed sweeps, the wide receivers that are giving us supplemental yardage as well.
So do you not see like a workhorse type situation?
Not yet.
Not
yet. It's more by committee at this point. But again, it's still early. We've got 15 practices left, and we'll see how it continues to develop.
Has anybody emerged in the backup quarterback position?
No, that's tight as it was prior to the scrimmage. They both did some really good things in the scrimmage. They both made some mistakes. And so that's an ongoing process. The competition continues. And right now, I would say that's going to continue at least through the next scrimmage and next and final scrimmage, which will be on Friday. And we got to make a decision shortly thereafter. It'll continue until then.
With both of those guys, I mean, how confident are you that they could get in there if Devin needs time off, or like where are you at in terms of kind of the divide there?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, Isaac is the one that has the Division I experience, and that definitely has helped him and will help him if he's called upon this year. We're not sure how Bird will react in a game situation. He's just a true freshman, and so that works in Isaac's favor as far as the experience factor. But Bird is a guy that is very mature, doesn't seem to flinch when his number's called and when he gets his opportunities, and so we will have whichever one emerges as the guy. We'll have confidence in him and away to go.
You've got the 5 freshman defensive tackles that you're looking for help from. How is that group specifically?
Good. We think those guys have a ton of upside, and the position group, the D tackle position group, is going to be well stocked for years to come. You say that, and with the corner, I guess you never know, but at least right now we feel like we're in a good place. Kuku is really doing a great job. The Frucy kid's doing a great job. They're all doing things well, and they're all coming along and learning and getting better each day. We think that we're going to have some real superstars emerge from that.
What are the big differences between Rogers and Parker in the backfield?
Well, not a ton.
Yeah.
They're both similar in size, 5'10", 5'11", about 210 pounds. They both do an outstanding job of picking up blitzes. They're not afraid. They stick their nose in there. They're north and south guys, so they run behind their pads well and get on field. And they both have good hands, so they're very similar. McCarr just has more experience in the relation just a true shot.
Is there any separation on that final corner spot opposite Scooby?
Blake Cotton right now is starting to make a push, so I'd say he's got the edge right now. Okay, guys.
All right, so that's the recap from yesterday. Nothing earth-shattering by any means. I mean, we're getting vanilla-ish answers, and I don't expect anything otherwise. This is just kind of where they're at in the camp. But we are getting kind of some parsing of some positions, and so, we'll get into that. I think one thing, though, that I want to touch on here before we jump into this is this fall camp, Kyle Whittingham, and at least to us, has been much more loose. There hasn't felt like the weight of the world on his shoulders. He looks like he's enjoying his time. I guarantee behind the scenes, there's a lot of things that he's going to nitpick, and there's going to be a lot of things that he's going to push, right? There's, those types of things. But I think, there is something different about him this fall where he's not feeling like he's up against the wall. Not that he has necessarily in years past, but I think there's been kind of an urgency to kind of prove something. Whereas this year, I'm getting the sense, and I could be totally off base here, but I'm getting the sense that he feels comfortable with where Utah's at. Now, if you gave him truth serum, I don't think he's going to sit there and be glowingly, he's not going to give glowing reviews on every position group. But at the same time, I think he feels confident in what he has, and at least the structure of what that could be, right? There's going to be position groups or players that need to improve, right? That's just anything. That's college football. Nobody is a finished product. Even at the NFL, it takes a long time for these guys to become a finished product, at least to their potential. And so, there's always going to be improvements needed, but I think you're getting a guy that just feels generally confident in what he's got. And I think that bodes well for Utah. I think as it gets closer to the games, you're going to see a little bit more of that tense, that focused look on Kyle's face. But it this late into camp, not that it's that late, but, a full 10-ish days into camp, he's been much more relaxed, and it's funny to say forthcoming because he doesn't really give that many open answers, but I think he's been much more open to kind of some of that conversation. There still isn't a ton to get from it, but I think you're seeing a guy that has been a little bit more loose. So what that means, I don't know. That's just kind of my general vibe pickup of kind of how he's kind of approached fall right now. He's still going to continue to push and continue to make this team better, but I think he's seeing a lot from the players that are kind of pushing themselves as well. They're holding themselves accountable. They feel the momentum on their side to be able to get better, right? This isn't one of those things where he's trying to motivate them to get to a level where they need to be to kind of be better than last year. Now, there's always that. There's always going to be conversations about that, but I think you're getting a guy that is just it's been, I don't want to call it easier, but it seems like things are clicking right now. So that all, like I said, could come crashing down to earth if Utah is terrible this year. But I think as it stands right now, coming into camp, there's a comfortability. I don't know. Is that even a word? A comfortable nature of where he's at given this point in camp. So as part of that, as he said, the scrimmage on Saturday, it wasn't as physical as they sometimes do. I think they're learning a little bit of how physical they need to be. I also think that they don't need to fully be that physical. They know who their guys are in a lot of respects. Outside of maybe your running backs and trying to see how they handle things, there doesn't seem to be a full need to kind of get that physicality in there. But as you may remember from a podcast either 1 or 2 times ago, Morgan Scally talking about kind of what they learned from the physical nature of fall camps. Excuse me. If you're not physical enough, sometimes you come out flat and you kind of get beat up, right? If you come out too physical, you might have too many banged up guys, and so there's a challenge there. So I think Utah is trying to do its best to judge and balance a lot of that stuff, and I think this is kind of their right approach. He said for the most part it was thud work for the ones. That's not full tackles essentially. That's guys being physical but not full force tackle to the ground, that kind of stuff. So you're trying to preserve your ones. I think a lot of them, especially offensive line, they're proven, and so there's no need to be able to kind of lose a season or get early injuries because of something stupid at a scrimmage. So for the most part, this is mostly twos that are working. They're trying to get that acclimation period to go better, trying to make sure that they have those depth guys working. Maybe there's some guys still pushing for the first starter roles, but for the most part, it's trying to identify your depth. And so, as you said, they're in a good place. They still have some improvement they need to make, but they've got the good things going on right now. So as it stands to wide receivers, this paired with last week where he said that the wide receivers have taken a big stride. They've been able to improve and grow. I think we're starting to see where Utah is identifying their players. He said in there that he's identified their travel squad, which is generally about 7 to 8 guys. There could be more, there could be less, but you're getting kind of the idea of what that rotation would be. Now, he doesn't specify who those players would be. My guess, based on kind of the players that I've talked to, the people that I've talked to, and just kind of general consensus vibes, is Tobias Merriweather, Larry Simmons, Whitmore, Zipperer, Davis, Calderella, Stevenson, Johnson, maybe Carvalho. Those are those guys that are probably in that mix. That's 9 players, and so somebody's got to fall off there. But I think you want to be able to have Merriweather, Simmons, and Whitmore kind of as your guys. Ryan Davis has obviously been a guy that understands the system coming from New Mexico. Dadrian Zipperer is a guy that has made a lot of progress in spring and fall as one of the only returning guys, and so you're hoping to get some success there. Luca Calderella has obviously been a guy that has had some success and then falls off and some success, and so curious to see what goes there. Nate Johnson is listed as a wide receiver, but really fascinated to see how they utilize him. So, I think you're starting to see that. They obviously have to produce. Talking to Devin Dampier yesterday, he highlighted Simmons as a guy that really stood out in the scrimmage portion. One day you'll get Simmons, one day you'll get Merriweather, another day you'll get J.J. Buchanan, who I didn't put on there, but he's a tight end. So I'm not putting the wide receivers, I'm not putting them in there, but you're getting a bunch of these guys that are kind of getting their chance. And so I think that bodes well for Utah to at least have a competent wide receiver room. We'll see what happens come August 30th, but I think they're in a good spot. The biggest change, and I wrote about this, the biggest news, I would say, coming from this, I wrote about it this morning, so if you have a chance to read about it there, you can go check it out at KSL.com, is Kyle saying that Wayshawn Parker and Nakari Rogers are interchangeable at RB1. Now, some people can take that one way or the other, right? You could say, that means that, Utah doesn't have a bona fide, quote-unquote, workhorse running back. Kyle even said as much in the sense that he doesn't have that guy right now. Some of that can be used as motivation to get Wayshawn, pushing even more. I view it as more of kind of an equalization of these two, where Rodgers is really kind of exploding in this system. He comes from New Mexico where he understands the system, and he also has a much better offensive line. And so now you've got two players that are, at least as it stands right now, on more of an equal plane, right? I think the upside is with Wayshawn Parker, right? I think the ceiling there is with him. He's just got a ton of talent, a lot of opportunities, but he's still young. As a freshman last year, he rushed for 700 yards, but he was a freshman, right? And so it's now pushing him to that next level to be even better. He obviously has goals to be a 1,000-yard rusher, 1,500-yard rusher, but he's going to probably split a lot of those carries with Rodgers. And if done effectively, can actually be a really great opportunity for Utah to not have that drop-off. in the article that I posted yesterday, or this morning, Utah's run game was awful. It was Mekhi Bernard. He had 1,000 yards, and then there was nothing. The next closest had something like 138 yards. It was in the hundreds. It was a massive drop-off. So regardless of what happens here, whether it's by a committee design like Kyle said, or it's just two guys that are kind of at a similar plane, that's a good thing in the sense that you have two guys that can kind of keep that engine churning. If, Wayshawn Parker is your guy, let's say, and he needs a breather or he gets injured, the hope is that N'Keary Rodgers is going to be right there, lockstep in essentially production. And if you can get both of those guys in that similar vein, that's a great thing. He also mentioned freshman Daniel Bray, Racine Guillory. Racine, once again, still he's a freshman who is young. He's 17. He should have been playing his senior season this year, but reclassified. So I mean, there's still a lot there. But if he's popping off and doing well, that bodes well for Utah, right? Daniel Bray, we've talked about. He's going to get some touches. Guys that weren't mentioned, Devin Green and Bryce Duke, two guys that obviously can have an impact as well. It's curious the selection that Kyle brings in at times, but there's a lot here, and I think on paper it's a much better situation than what Utah had last year. So regardless of if it's a running back by committee or a workhorse, 1A, 1B, whatever the situation here is, I think Utah is in a good spot. And I'm not just trying to be optimistic for optimism's sake. I think Utah really is just in a good spot. I think you've got two guys that are performing at a high level, and they're pushing each other. And I think you need that. If done correctly, you can still play both of these guys, especially in an offense that wants to run the ball and do it well. As I mentioned in my article, Penn State is doing that very well. You had two 1,000-yard rushers. If these two, don't get an ego trip or anything like that, I think you can have a great opportunity at hand where Utah can distribute the ball and do a lot of things, where you're not just keyed in on one guy. You have to respect a bunch of different guys, and so I think that's beneficial. And then there's that QB2 update going into the scrimmage. Kyle had talked about how these, Isaac Wilson and Bird Ficklin were kind of locked up together. They were going to try to get some separation after the scrimmage, but it doesn't sound like they're there yet. This is ultimately Isaac Wilson's job to lose, not only because he's the returning guy that's coming in, but that experience of having last year is going to be beneficial. Now, some are going to look at that and say he's not able to beat out a freshman quarterback. The reality is Bird Ficklin is a talented guy as well, right? Isaac still has things to learn, and he needs to be able to improve to be able to get there. And so I think, there's some give and take there. I do think Utah's in a fine position there if Devin needs some time off. They feel confident there, but I think, you still need to see another level from these guys, right? And as Kyle said there, Isaac Wilson has the opportunity there more so than maybe Bird, simply because of his experience in the program. But, it's more, who's going to be consistent, who's going to be the best there. If they can see some continued success in this next weekish, as they go into their second scrimmage, I think you're going to kind of see some decisions made, and they have to eventually get there. You have to eventually start parsing out the reps more, where Devin is going to get the bulk of the reps, and then, if it's Isaac at QB2, he's getting, 10, 15% of the reps. You have to be able to do that, and then the other guy goes to practice squad or just gets, not a ton. So personally, I think Bird going onto the practice squad would do Utah the best service. You give Isaac the reps, and as long as he's consistent and he's showing progress, that helps. So we'll see what happens. But, really fascinated in that battle. I don't want to say that it doesn't matter because Utah's gone through so many quarterbacks these last few years, but, I know this stresses a lot of Utah fans out to have a mobile quarterback, a guy that could instantly get hurt, and needing to have a backup to replace them. So, this is a vital position, much more than maybe some of your other two deep. Not that, other position groups don't matter, but I think as we saw last year, if you don't have a competent number two who understands the system, can execute it, to the levels, or at least close to the levels as your number one, it changes things drastically. Now, beyond that, on the defensive side of the ball, he talked about his young defensive tackles. He mentioned guys like Carson Kafusi, Pupu Sepulona. He didn't mention Semi Taualonga, Dylan Battle. These are some other guys that are in there, but he's calling them potential superstars, right? I don't think he sees them as superstars right now. Maybe Carson Kafusi, I think you're seeing him kind of separate, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets starter minutes / first guy off the bench, sideline, whatever you want to call it. To be able to come in. But I think you're getting some guys that are doing well. They continue to prop up Pupu Sepulona. There's a ton of love for him, and so there's some opportunities there. So, I don't think they feel worried about this position group. They're young. There's going to be some things that they have to learn, but they're also going up against a top offensive line, so I think they feel confident there. And then lastly, Blake Cotton seems to be winning out at cornerback 1 opposite of Scooby Davis. But there's still going to be a battle there. This isn't settled by any means, but the reality is Sharif Shah uses a rotation system. You're going to get Smith Snowden in there, especially if Jackson Benny comes in at the nickel. You're going to have, other guys rotating in. This isn't going to be just a 2-man show. This is going to be something that has a lot of volatility, not even volatility in the negative connotation, but more just, utilizing a lot of the talents and being able to tackle teams that way. So I think Utah's in a good spot there. Blake Cotton has really come on strong. Don Saunders is another guy that's been in there. Rock Caldwell's another guy that's been talked about. And so I think Utah feels confident what they got there. So that's a very quick update. It's amazing how fast 30 minutes can go. But that's a quick update on Camp Kyle. We'll get more from the defensive players this week. But just coming up this week, we have a really fun podcast episode where I'm going to bring on two of maybe your favorite guys, and we're going to have some fun. I'm not gonna give it away right now, but I think it's going to be one that you're going to enjoy. So we'll release that later this week. And then on Saturday, for those that are interested, Mark Harlan and some of the officials at Utah Athletics are hosting a town hall to talk about kind of the house settlement, NIL, all the changes that have gone on. This is an opportunity for media and fans to be able to ask questions. And so, really curious to see what is going to be learned there. Obviously, there's been a lot of changes, and for those that are really fascinated about that, you can go be a part of that and ask some questions. So really curious to see how that goes, but that's kind of how this week is shaping up, and then we're getting closer to game week. So with that said, we're going to sign off so I can get up to Utah to get some more stuff. But I appreciate you tuning in. As I said, we're going to have a fun episode this week. I'll try to go maybe a little deeper in some stuff, but more so have some fun. And we'll get ready for some more updates as spring or fall camp goes on. So with that, signing off today, and I hope you have a great day, and we'll chat with you later. Bye.